The current media landscape is oversaturated with superhero content, be it movies, comic books, and even TV shows. One Punch Man, by the mangaka simply known by his pseudonym One, was a breath of fresh air when it made its debut in early 2009. The plot follows the story of a deadpan ex-salaryman turned superhero who's able to defeat the strongest of enemies with a single punch after he trains till his hair falls off. While the series is a satire of sorts on the superhero genre, it's a much greater satire on society in general. For instance, there is a villain who turned into a crab monster after eating too much crab, which is a commentary of sorts on the over-consuming state of society. There's another villain, Marugori, who is basically a roid head who has become a mindless monster after getting juiced to the gills. As the series progresses, the nature of the villains that our protagonist faces become increasingly more complex, along with a drastic spike in their power levels. How do you keep a manga going about a hero who basically destroys his opponents with a single punch? You have to churn out villain after villain for the bald man to fight and overcome effortlessly. The first real threat that Saitama faced that was an actual challenge was Awakened Garu, but he too couldn't really handle One Punch Man. We were then introduced to an entity that is literally considered to be God. This God, however, isn't a benevolent one and is bent on destroying mankind. Yeah, we've officially reached the point where Saitama at some point will go against God himself. It is for this reason we thought we should explore the anatomy of this so-called God. You know how it goes in these videos. We're going to tell you everything about his powers, personality, and motivations so that you can gain a greater insight about not just this character in question, but the series as a whole. So, without further ado, let's dive into the cosmic side of One Punch Man and try to figure out just what this God is after. Maybe we'll find out, maybe we won't. Who knows? After all, God works in mysterious ways. Who is God? The true answer to this question is an eternal mystery, and no, we're not being theological here. He truly is the most mysterious being in the One Punch Man series. He seems to possess power levels that we haven't yet seen so far. In fact, he's as close to divinity as you can come within this franchise. Whatever his true nature is, this god seems to fit the bill for everything we understand about a god from a mythical point of view. He seems to be omniscient and omnipresent, and for some reason that hasn't been explained yet, he desires a human vessel that he can possess to serve as his avatar. He's tempted numerous heroes, including the Homeless Emperor, Tatsumaki, and even Garu. Though some have been able to see through his ruse, many have fallen to his scheme of their own volition or by accident. God makes his first appearance when the Homeless Emperor is recounting his backstory to Zombie Man. The Emperor describes how, just as he was about to end his life by hanging, having grown tired of his perceived humanity's shallow intelligence and fabricated ideals, he was visited by this entity that he called God. This God granted him the necessary powers to act out his desire to root out all of humanity from existence. He's also mentioned in an ancient underground mural that Orochi discovered. However, the villain only discovers a part of the mural, which makes him falsely believe that he's destined to be this god. Orochi realizes too late that this was never his destiny, as he's defeated by Saitama with a single serious punch. The punch, however, disturbs the environment enough to reveal a larger picture of the true god, a humanoid entity towering over Orochi. During Garu's fight with Saitama, this being appears once more in front of the former in the guise of his master Bang and offers to grant him the necessary power to defeat his opponent. Garu, after recognizing the fact that this impersonator was not his master, swats its hands away, but even though he had refused God's offer, the mere act of coming in contact with his hands transfers his power to Garu, turning him into an awakened Garu, Cosmic Fear Mode. In this form, he becomes the first individual to pose a challenge to Saitama in the series. Despite this immense power boost, Saitama is able to defeat Garu and travel back in time to defeat him once again before he commits any of his atrocities, removing God's taint from within him. God is also seen showing irritation after Tatsumaki refutes his offer for power, as she recognizes that the person standing in front of her is not Blast, but an imposter. He also tries to tempt Manako, Saitama, and Flashy Flash, who come in contact with one of God's mysterious cubes. However, before any of them can respond to God, it's snatched away by Blast, who has been researching the object and its creator in secret. We are told that God appeared before Blast and offered to make him his avatar, but was rejected. Blast is said to be the only individual who has fought God and survived, but we don't know for sure the nature of this conflict. We are told that the fight between Garu and Saitama cracked the barriers between dimensions that housed the seal that housed God. This pretty much confirms that he's an extra-dimensional being not of this world. However, his fixation on the dimension of the heroes is yet to be explained. A top-secret meeting was held amongst the S-class heroes of the world where it was announced that God's interference with the human world had seen a significant increase recently. The group decided to keep this a secret from the rest of the world until they had proper countermeasures in place. From what we've gleaned so far, this god seems to be an extra-dimensional entity that possesses powers at a cosmic level. He was most likely worshipped by humanity at some point as a god, and it's possible that the first superpowered beings received their abilities from him. At some point in time, he was sealed away from this reality in another dimension. Despite this, he possesses sufficient power to interfere with the human world both as an astral projection and through those mysterious cubes. The fact that he only ever appears as a projection and not physically verifies the things we just spoke about. He's shaping up to be the main antagonist of the series and is most likely seeking an avatar powerful enough to break his seal so that he can enter the human world and destroy everything, putting an end to the species that imprisoned him. What does God look like? In his first appearance in front of Homeless Emperor, he appears as a featureless humanoid composed of swirling wind. At the same time, Psykos describes him as being a humanoid with countless spirals overlapping each other like on the planet Jupiter. When he appears in front of the Homeless Emperor for the second time, God's appearance resembles that of a towering humanoid with no discernible features other than the fact that his entire body, including his face, seems to be made out of muscles and bones, giving him a grotesque, disfigured appearance. We know that he's also able to shapeshift at will when he appears to Garo and Tatsumaki as Bang and Blast respectively. Our belief is that these different forms of God, especially as seen by the Homeless Emperor and Psykos, are the result of the human brain trying to give him shape that it can comprehend. We also catch a glimpse of a giant humanoid in the darkness when Flash, Manako, and Saitama peer through a hole below the fortress of the Monster Association. Even though the three characters don't see this individual, we as the audience are given a sneak peek of it. Whatever his true form may be, there's a general consensus that it will be unlike anything we've seen so far in the series. What is God's personality? God's personality is one full of contradiction and mystery. He seems to loathe human beings and their existence, but at the same time seems to think of them as inconsequential beings. He's extremely cunning and opportunistic, as seen by how he tempts people at their lowest moments with promises of power, sometimes going so far as to appear in the shape of people that they look up to the most. God also seems to work from the shadows, using cubes and avatars to do most of his work. His secretive nature leads to him murdering those who he perceives as having failed his purpose. This also further accentuates the point that we made earlier about his absolute disregard for human life. Humanity is merely a tool for him to use to destroy itself, wherein lies the irony despite his immeasurable power. Despite showing human emotions like irritation, surprise, anger, and disappointment, somehow, God is very far removed from understanding the rest of the emotional spectrum. It's either that he doesn't understand the concept of empathy, or he simply finds humans too far beneath himself to elicit such feelings. God almost seems overconfident and assured of his eventual victory, as even when his potential avatars fall one by one, he doesn't express any real rage at the outcome. He also has infinite patience because, judging by the tablet containing his mural, God has existed for much longer than humanity itself. During all this time, he's been locked away from this reality and has bided his time to execute whatever his master plan is. Throughout the millennia, he has subtly influenced human society to engineer events to further his plans. It's a feat that only someone with a god-tier level of patience would be able to pull off. His overconfidence can also be seen from the fact that, despite Blast and his crew collecting the cubes that allow people to communicate with him, they seem to face little to no retaliation from him. Despite his guise as a benevolent being to those whom he provides power, God is a vengeful deity that doesn't forgive or forget. Powers and ability. As the entity that's being built up to be the overarching villain of the One Punch Man series, God's powers and abilities are unlike anything we've seen so far. His level of power is on a cosmic scale and is capable of destroying entire worlds and universes alike. With his character still being currently explored, we're sure that there are abilities and powers that God is yet to display. It'll be interesting to see what his abilities look like at the peak of his powers. However, we will most likely have to wait until the end of the series to see this play out. For now though, we've gotten a pretty good look at a fair number of abilities and powers displayed by this divine entity, so let's take a second to go over those. Power bestowal and removal. The ability to bestow boons and powers has been a recurring ability for most divine beings since ancient times, and the god from One Punch Man is no different in this regard. He's able to transfer his powers and abilities into another being, making them infinitely stronger than their original self. However, how much power he bestows upon another individual seems to be fully dependent on God. When Garou fights Saitama, he gives Garou abilities that finally test our bald vigilante for the first time, but to the homeless samurai and many others, the power he grants them is nowhere near the same level. To be granted his powers, one can either be contacted by him directly, or if they come into contact with one of those mysterious boxes. In either case, it seems God is not able to forcefully grant his powers to an individual if they're not willing. However, there is a catch to this, as it seems the actual condition is that as long as they don't come in contact with God's hand that is offered to them, they will not imbibe his powers. Tatsumaki rejects his offer, and God is not able to forcibly make her take his hand. However, Garou, who does the same, swats his hand away and comes in contact with it, which apparently is enough for the contract to be applied. No one knows how many people God has empowered and cast aside in this manner over the millennia. Not only is God able to bestow individuals with powers and abilities, but he's also able to take away what he has given, which almost always results in the concerned individual's demise. Unlike the conditions in place for an individual to accept his powers, there seems to be nothing of that sort when it comes to him being able to take back what he's granted. They weren't lying when they said that God giveth and taketh away. Telepathy and mind incursion. One of the most insidious of God's abilities is the ability to freely enter someone's mind. He can alter someone's perception of reality after he enters their mind. Not only is he able to take on the appearance of people that these individuals are most vulnerable to, he's also able to mimic their voices and mannerisms. Just before his demise, the homeless emperor sees God towering above him in a lush green meadow. The homeless emperor doesn't seem to realize that this is all going on inside his head, judging by the way he reacts. This shows the mental strength of God when compared to a human being. To someone whose mind has been invaded by God, his ability to take hold of their mind is so strong that they don't even realize what has happened and can confuse this ability with God being able to warp reality itself. And I mean, who knows? If God were to be fully unleashed, he may very well do so at that scale. He's also able to communicate telepathically with individuals through the mysterious boxes and exert some sort of influence on the personalities of those imbued with his powers. This is seen when Garou becomes significantly more violent and bloodthirsty after gaining his cosmic powers from God. We can therefore safely say that this God entity is not just powerful in terms of supernatural abilities and strength, but also in terms of its psychic abilities. Supernatural awareness. This being possesses heightened supernatural awareness that spans several dimensions. He seems to be fairly aware of what's going on within the human world despite being supposedly sealed up. The moon, for instance, seems to be an ominous part of his being as it appears multiple times in relation to him. We could be wrong, but it gives us a chilling vibe of someone staring down at the earth and looking at what's going on. It's said that ever since it became aware of Saitama's prowess, the entity has only increased its intervention into the three-dimensional realm even more. Another example of its supernatural awareness is how it's able to sense the individuals experiencing the exact negative emotions that make them vulnerable to his temptation. We have to understand that this level of awareness that God displays means that despite his being sealed away, he might actually be omniscient and omnipresent if he were to be unleashed, just like a true divinity. Dimensional travel. God is able to travel through dimensions as seen when his feet emerge from the portal. However, for whatever reason, he is yet to be able to fully manifest his entire being into the three-dimensional world. We're certain that at some point in history, this being was able to do just that and caused untold devastation before he was sealed away. It's fairly obvious that if this being wants to invade the human world once more, it needs to be able to travel through dimensions. One's left to wonder just how many dimensions this being has conquered throughout its eternal existence. Time manipulation. When Manako, Flash, and Saitama travel to the underground in Z City near one of the cubes that we've been mentioning in this video, Blast notes that their environment experiences a much tardier flow of time than the outside. The cube created by this entity is credited with creating this dilation in time, meaning that God himself probably has this ability, which he can use on a much larger scale. We know that God has the ability to travel through time, and this is a technique that he imparts to Garou, who acknowledged that it originates from this divine entity. This truly proves that God is an omnipresent being who can exist simultaneously across both time and space. All of his feats and abilities point towards the fact that the God from One Punch Man is a true divinity, albeit a renegade one. Marvelous verdict! With how overpowered the protagonist of the series is, its creator is pushed to create villains that are increasingly more challenging. While we thought that the fight with Garu was the greatest challenge that Baldi had ever faced, we now know that his cosmic mode was due to the intervention of God, and we're left with a tantalizing prospect of how our beloved hero is going to be able to deal with this new threat. This God, for all intents and purposes, seems to be as omniscient, omnipresent, and all-powerful as any divine being that we humans believe in. It's highly unlikely that Saitama will be able to live up to his One Punch Man moniker, and it might take everything that our hero has to defeat this villain. This, however, actually puts into perspective the ridiculous strength of Saitama himself, as no one other than God himself is able to push him to his absolute limits. If the fight with Awakened Garu is anything to go by, there is a chance that even Saitama might not come out of this completely unscathed. For now, though, just like everyone else, we're eagerly awaiting to see where the plot takes us in regard to this mysterious being. Thanks for sticking with us right to the end of the video. If you enjoyed it, you can find more of the same on our channel where we cover all your favorite animes and characters. We hope that with this video, we were able to help you discern even a fraction of the divine mystery that this entity represents. We hope to see you soon on the next one, and until then, stay safe and stay marvelous.